Hello and welcome to Elemental Hardware Enrichment. My name is Aiden and today we're going to be building Hooked. Before we get started with building, let's go ahead and introduce the supplies that we're going to need for this project. To build Hooked, we're going to need a damp rag, a bottle of glue, a hardware tray, some sandpaper, a hammer block, and our safety glasses. Let's go ahead and put those on now. Now that we've gone over all of our supplies, let's go ahead and introduce the tools that we're going to need for this project. So to build Hooked, we're going to need a hammer and a set of needle nose pliers. Now that we've introduced all of our supplies and tools, the next step will be to talk about our parts. Let's go ahead and talk about our parts. So I have my parts right here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them one by one. The first piece I want to bring out is this piece here, and this will be our leg A. You'll notice that the leg has a dado on one side and a through hole that goes through the center. We also have leg B, which is very similar to leg A. It also has the dado and through hole, but this piece also has the Elemental Hardware brand. So leg B has the brand, leg A has no brand, otherwise they're identical. Next we have our upright. You'll notice that the upright has a hole at the top and bottom in the center, and then it has 4 pre-drilled holes along each edge close to the bottom. Next we have our arms. We have arm A and arm B. Now these pieces are identical, they're interchangeable, but we're going to label one as arm A and one as arm B. Similar to the legs, they both have a dado and a through hole, and they also contain a pre-drilled hole on either end that goes all the way through. Lastly, we have our feet, which are going to come in a bag like this. There are 4 of them. They are all identical. They are little square pieces with 2 pre-drilled nail holes on the sides. Now that we've introduced all of our wood parts, the next step will be to talk about our hardware. Let's go ahead and introduce our hardware. So I have my hardware in a bag right here. I'm going to go ahead and take each piece out and introduce it. The first thing I'm taking out are my strings that look like this, and you should have 4 of them. They might be tied up together, so let's just go ahead and double check that we have all 4. Next we have a purple dot bag with our finish nails. I'm going to go ahead and put these into my tray. Next we have a blue dot bag. Inside this blue dot bag we have our screw hooks. And lastly we have our yellow dot bag with a few different hardware components in here. So let's take them out and talk through them. The first parts I'm going to take out are these pieces right here, and these are going to be my hanger bolts. There are 2 of them. I should also have 4 cord locks that look like this. There's a little compression button right here, and it should open up these openings on the top and bottom. Next, I should have 4 rings. The rings look like this. They're all 4 identical. And lastly, inside this bag, we have a smaller bag, and this bag is going to contain 2 different components. The first will be our wing nuts that look like this. And lastly, our screw eyes. There are 4 of them, and they look like this. I'm going to put all of our hardware in our tray, get these bags out of our way, and then we'll be ready to move on to our next step, which will be to sand our wood parts. Let's get started sanding. First thing we're going to need to do is set up a sanding block. So I'm going to take my sandpaper just like this, set it so that the soft side faces up, and then lay my hammer block across it so that it fits that whole space. I'll then fold the edges over the block like this to set up my sanding block. Now I'm going to go ahead and begin sanding my parts. Now when I'm sanding them, I want to focus on 2 distinct edges. The first will be the end grain edge here, which shows the layers of the plywood. This is going to be the cut edge and will be the roughest, so I'm going to spend the most time sanding that, and then I'll move on to sanding the veneered edge just to smooth it over a little bit. So we're going to start by sanding the end grain edges of this piece here, and we're going to go ahead and get started now. Now that we've sanded all of the end grain edges, we're going to go ahead and sand the top and bottom veneered edges to smooth those over as well. All right, now we're just going to go ahead and repeat those steps with our remaining wood parts. Now that we've sanded the veneered and end grain edges of each of our parts, the last thing we're going to do is sand out the dados on our arms and our legs. So for that, I'm going to be using the shorter edge of my sanding block. I'm going to place it right into that dado and sand back and forth. And really what I'm trying to do is just take out any extra material that's in there to make sure that my parts are going to fit together properly. Once I've done it on my first piece, I can go ahead and do it with the remaining three. Now that we've thoroughly sanded all of our parts, the last thing to do will just be to use our rag to wipe up any excess dust. Don't forget to wipe up your workstation as well. All right, we've got our parts all sanded and cleaned up, so now we're ready to start our build. The first step will be to attach our feet to our legs. Let's go ahead and get started attaching the feet to our legs. So for this step, we're going to begin with leg A, and we're going to place it onto our work surface so that this dado faces up. We're then going to locate our 4 feet, and you'll notice that the feet have these pre-drilled holes in them. So for that, we're going to need our purple dot bag containing our finished nails. We're going to go ahead and open this up and dump it into the tray. Once we've dumped out our nails, we can go ahead and place 1 nail into each of the pre-drilled holes on our feet. Now that we've set all of our nails, the next step will be to spread some glue onto the opposite end of one of our feet. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my glue, I'm going to remove the red cap and place it in my tray, and I'm going to flip a foot over and spread some glue onto the side opposite from the nails. Once I've got the glue on there, I'm going to go ahead and spread it evenly using a finger. Then I can wipe my finger on my rag, and I'm going to go ahead and set this foot so that it's flush with the outside edge of the leg. Again, double checking that this dado is facing up before I go ahead and nail in my foot. So I'm going to take my time and just make sure my piece is nice and flush. And you may notice that, you have your nails oriented this way, or you could have them oriented this way. The piece is square, so it doesn't make a difference. Either way, it will be placed correctly. So I'm just going to double check my alignment. Once I'm happy with my alignment, I'm going to go ahead and tack in my first nail. So I'm going to hit it about halfway in. Once I've got that nail tacked in, I'm just going to double check my alignment. And as long as I'm happy with everything, I can go ahead and finish off my nails. I want to make sure that my nails are flush, so I'm going to run my finger over them to make sure they're not sticking up. If they are, I can give them a couple more taps with my hammer. Then the very last thing to do will just be to wipe up any excess glue. All right, I've got that first foot attached, so now I'm just going to go ahead and repeat those same steps to attach the second one. Just like that, I have my feet attached to leg A, so now I can begin attaching my feet to leg B. So I'm going to move this off to the side, and I'm going to locate leg B. Remember, leg B has the Elemental Hardware logo branded here on the top. And that's actually really important because the orientation of this piece matters quite a lot. When we begin assembling our project, these two pieces need to fit together like this, and the feet need to both be on the same side. So with leg A, I attach the feet to the same side as the dado, whereas on leg B, I'm going to attach it to the opposite side so that when I set it up, my feet will both be on the same side of my assembly. So again, I'm going to be setting this piece so that the logo faces up and the dado faces down. And then once again, I'm going to go ahead and spread some glue onto the underside of one of my feet. Once I've got that glue on there, I'm going to spread it evenly, wipe my finger clean, and then go ahead and position it on the edge of my piece. Again, I'm taking my time to line my piece up, make sure it's nice and flush before I tack in one of my nails. Once my nail is tacked in, I can just double check my alignment before I finish off the nails. One last time, I'm going to double check that they're flush, give them a couple extra taps if necessary. All right, very last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and wipe up any excess glue. And now I can go ahead and repeat those steps to attach my last foot. So let's do that now. All right, just like that, I have my feet secured to both leg A and leg B, and I'm ready to move on to my next step, which is going to be to begin to assemble my upright dowel. Let's begin to assemble our upright dowel. So for this step, we're going to need the upright dowel, and we're going to need to start by working with one of our hanger bolts. Now, if you take a look at the hanger bolt, you'll notice that one side is threaded to act like a machine screw. This side has no pointed tip, it's flat on the tip, and it has very narrow concentric threads. This will be the machine screw side of our hanger bolt. The other end of the hanger bolt has a more pointed tip. These threads sit at a little bit of a diagonal, and there's a lot more space between them, and these will be the wood screw sides of our hanger bolts. So as I'm working with it as we move through the project, I'm going to reference the machine screw side with the narrower threads and the wood screw side with the wider threads so that we know what that means. Now what we want to do is set the hanger bolt into one of the holes on the top or bottom of our insert dowel. Or our upright dowel, excuse me. And to do that, we're going to need to use our wing nuts. So I'm going to go ahead and locate my wing nuts. And I'm going to be setting these wing nuts onto the machine screw side of the hanger bolt so that it'll allow me to thread it onto the upright dowel. The first wing nut I'm going to start with is this wing nut here. Doesn't matter, they're both identical. But for this one, I want to set it upside down. So you can see that the wings are actually facing down as opposed to setting it this way where the wings are facing up. So I'm going to go ahead and set it just like this, wings facing down, and I'm going to be screwing it onto the machine screw side of my hanger bolt, but the depth or how far you screw it down is very important. So basically you want to screw it down until the very tip of the wings sits about 4 or 5 threads above the machine screw, the wood screw section. So I'm going to go ahead and just double check it right about there. So you can see I have about this much coming out the top, and if I count from the tip of the wing nut, I have maybe 3 or 4 threads here before I start my machine screw, or my wood screw. And that's really important because that's going to give me the proper depth so that when I set this into the upright dowel, it'll be set deep enough. And now what I can do is leave that first wing nut right there. I can take my second wing nut. This time I'm going to have the wings facing up, and I'm going to go ahead and screw that right over the top. And what I want to do now is lock these two wing nuts together. So I'm going to pinch both of them between my fingers and turn them in opposite directions to lock them in place. And don't worry if they're both facing the exact same direction. You can see mine are a little bit offset, and that's totally fine. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to grip this outside wing nut, and I'm going to go ahead and line up the tip of the wood screw section with this hole in my upright dowel. And it doesn't matter if you start on the top or the bottom. We're just going to start on this side here, and I'm going to begin to thread this into the hole. And this can be a little bit tricky, so if it takes a couple of tries to get it started, that's okay. Just do the best that you can, try to keep it straight, and you're just going to thread it on there with your fingers until it gets too tight that you can no longer comfortably turn it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to utilize our needle nose pliers to help us turn this the rest of the way. And we're actually going to be tightening this down until this bottom wing nut makes contact with the upright dowel. So it's very important for this part. I'm going to use my pliers. I'm going to be grabbing that top wing nut, holding it securely, and then I'm going to be rotating to set this hanger bolt into place. And if it comes off, that's okay. And we're just going to rotate this to tighten it down until that bottom wing nut makes contact. And just as soon as it makes contact, you're ready to stop. And now what we're going to need to do is take this off. And that can be a little bit tricky. First, you want to try to just loosen this wing nut. If you can't loosen it or it starts to undo the hanger bolt, go ahead and grab that bottom wing nut with your fingers and then loosen the top one. And once you have that top one loosened, you should be able to just unscrew it like that. Put it off to the side, and then you can take off that second one. And now we're going to go ahead and repeat those steps to attach another hanger bolt on the opposite end of the upright dowel. So I'm going to walk you through that one more time a little more quickly. Again, we want to identify the machine screw side versus the wood screw side. We're going to start with our first wing nut. This one's going to go wings facing down, and we're going to screw that onto the hanger bolt until it sits about 3 or 4 threads above the wood screw section. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but just kind of use your finger to line it up and see that you have a good bit of space there. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and screw the other one onto the top. This time the wings face up, tighten those together, and then we're going to set it into the hole. Once we've got it set, we can use our needle nose pliers to tighten it down until that bottom wing nut makes contact. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, once we've got it in there, we can go ahead and loosen up our wing nuts and remove them. Once you get them off, go ahead and place them in your tray for later. Now we've got our hanger bolts attached to each side of our upright dowel, but before we move on, we want to double check that they're deep enough. So what we're going to be doing is taking our assembled legs and feet, and we're going to place the dados together so that we make kind of a little cross. And we're going to place that so that the feet face down. And we're going to go ahead and take our upright dowel and place it through this assembly. And you should be able to place it in there without it making contact with the table. And so you can see that this sits flush and it doesn't wobble. If I go ahead and take it out and flip it over, I should have the same thing on both sides. And you can see that these are set deeply enough so that it's not going to impede this when we put it all together. Now let's say you did put it together and you notice that it's wobbling like this. That means that the hanger bolt is not set deeply enough. And what you'll need to do is remove it, reset your wing nuts back on there, and use your needle nose pliers to set it a little more deeply and then retest it. But this is all good, so we're going to move on to our next step. And what we're going to be doing now is begin to attach our screw hooks. Now, I'm going to take my screw hooks out of the bag, place them here onto the desk. And what you'll see is that the screw hooks have kind of a sharp tip on the end that's going to allow us to screw them into our upright dowel. But the issue is that the screw hooks might be a little bit too long and we don't want them to run into each other as we're screwing them in. So we're actually going to go ahead and remove the very tip of this so that we make sure that everything's spaced properly. And to do that, we're going to be using our needle nose pliers. If you take a look at the pliers here on the front, you'll see that one side has this little kind of oval shape. And if you turn it over, the other side has these cutters. And so we're going to be using the cutters to trim our screw hooks. And what I want you to do is set the pliers down onto your work surface so that this cutter section faces up. I'm going to kind of just rotate it a little bit towards my left hand. And I'm going to go ahead and place the very tip of this screw hook between those two cutters. And I don't want to do too much, but I'm just going to place it right there between the cutters. I'm going to squeeze, and then I'm going to kind of rotate this like this as I'm squeezing, and it should snip off that bottom piece. So I'm going to go ahead and do that a couple more times with all of them. And I'm not taking off too much material, just kind of that very bottom section. And I'm just going to go ahead. Again, you don't want to go too deep, so just make sure you have just the very tip in there. Rotate and twist. We're going to do this with all 4. All right, once you're done with that, you don't want to lose these little metal shavings, so you can go ahead and sweep them up and into the trash. And now we're ready to go ahead and set our screw hooks. So if you take a look at your upright dowel, you'll notice that we have these 4 pre-drilled holes around either edge, and we're going to be using our fingers to screw one screw hook into each of those holes. So it doesn't matter which screw hook or which hole you start with, line the screw hook up and go ahead and get it set into the hole by turning it clockwise. And I'm just going to rotate it like that until it's fully set. And as it's getting close to the bottom, I want to make sure that when I rotate it, it's going to face up like that, so towards this top hanger bolt. And I'm going to go ahead and set all 4 just like that. All right, I've got all 4 hooks attached, and once again, you want to make sure that the orientation is correct, that each hook is facing up towards this top hanger bolt like that. And now we have our upright dowel fully assembled, so we're ready to move on to our next step, which will be to assemble our arms before we put everything together. All right, let's go ahead and attach our screw eyes to our arms. Now we have our arms right here, and remember, one arm will be arm A and one will be arm B, but it doesn't matter which one's which because they're the same. Just make sure that you identify one as A and one as B. And I'm going to start with arm A, and this arm I'm going to set so that this dado faces up. Just like how we did with our legs, it's very important that we have one with dado up and one with dado down so they fit together properly. And for this step, I'm going to need my screw eyes, so I'm going to go ahead and locate those. And I'm going to be placing one screw eye into each of the pre-drilled holes on the edges of my arm A. Again, dado facing up. I'm going to go ahead and take the screw eye, place it over the hole, and just use my fingers to screw it into place. And I'm just going to screw it in until the threaded section is fully set into this hole here, and then I can move on to the next one. All right, I've got them both set onto arm A. So now I'm going to move on to arm B. And this time I'm going to make sure that my dado is facing down. And I'm going to do those same steps again. And just like that, I have my screw eyes attached. And what I want to do now is set my pieces together to make sure that all of my screw eyes are going to be on the same side. And that's how I know I'm ready to move on to the next step, which will be to attach my upright dowel to my arms and legs. Let's get started attaching the upright dowel to the arms and legs. So I'm going to start with my legs, and I'm going to go ahead and set those up so that the feet face down. So I've got them together like that, and my feet face down just like that. And for this, I am going to need one of my wing nuts, so I'll grab that. And then I'm going to grab my upright dowel, and I'm going to make sure that the hanger bolt closest to the screw hooks is facing down. This is the bottom, and I'm going to set that right through the hole in the center of the legs. I'm then going to flip this assembly over and just use my fingers to screw on a wing nut. You want the wing nut tight enough that it's going to hold the legs in place so they don't wobble, but it doesn't need to be crazy tight. Once you've got it on there, I like to line the feet up so they're in line with my screw hooks, just because I think it looks nice, but if you prefer to have them offset, that's fine too. Next, we're going to go ahead and attach our arms. So similarly to how we did the feet, we're going to go ahead and set these up together. We're going to make sure that those screw eyes face down, and we're going to place this over the top. Now, it may just pop right on. If it doesn't, you can screw it on kind of like a helicopter, like that. Now, the orientation of this one is very important. You need to make sure that each of these screw eyes is in line with one of the hooks. So you want to check that orientation, and then you're going to grab your remaining wing nut and screw that on. Again, doesn't need to be super tight, but just tight enough that this isn't going to wobble around. And just like that, we have our hooked game set up, and we're ready to move on to our last step, which will be to attach our rings and our strings. Let's get started attaching our rings and our strings. The first thing that we're going to do is attach one string to each of our rings. So let's go ahead and grab our 4 strings. And along with that, we'll need our 4 rings. So I'm just going to start with 1 string and 1 ring. I'm going to start by placing the string through the ring until I have a little over 1 inch hanging out. And then I'm just going to tie a knot to tie them together. Once I have the knot, I'm going to go ahead and double knot it. And I want to make sure to pull that nice and tight. And then I'm just going to use a little drop of glue to secure that together. So right on the knot, I'm just going to place a tiny little drop of glue. And I'll kind of spread that around with the tip of the glue bottle. Once I have that, I can set this off to the side, and I'm going to repeat those steps with my remaining strings and ring. So I'll walk you through it one more time. We have a ring. We'll take our string, place it through about 1.5 inches maybe. We're going to tie them together, pull the knot tight, double knot it, make sure it's nice and tight, and then add a little bit of glue. All right, let's go ahead and do that 2 more times with our remaining strings and rings. All right, we have our rings attached to each of our strings. So now we're going to go ahead and set everything up onto our hooked project using our cord locks. And so what I want to do is take a look at my cord lock. And if you look, when I press this little button here, it's going to open up a chamber that I can set my string into. So I'm going to open up that chamber. And on one side, I'm just going to set the string through the opening. And then when I let go, you can see that it's locked on there. And so now that I have it on the string, I'm going to pull it down about halfway, and I'm going to set a cord lock onto each of these strings. Now that I have a cord lock on each string, what I'm going to go ahead and do is thread the string through one of my screw eyes. And then I'm going to thread it through the other side of the cord lock as I press this down. Once I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and pull the cord lock up to the top, and then I'm going to measure out the distance by hanging the ring onto this hook, and then just pulling this tight until it just barely reaches the hook. And now I can go ahead and repeat that step with my remaining strings. right, and just like that, my project is complete. So now I'm ready to go get this painted, and I'll be right back. All right, I got my hooked all decorated, and I think it turned out really nicely. Now I can take it home and enjoy it with my friends and family. I really appreciate you guys stopping by to build this with me on Elemental Hardware Enrichment, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one.